my Area 51 line. You're on the air. Hello.
Welcome to the Blondes and Booze Paranormal Podcast, where what you've known as reality will be shattered by the truth. Krista and Brandy will lift the veil from your eyes, revealing what has either been hidden or denied you for eons.
Hey, hey, hey. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, everybody.
And
here is our special, this is our special guest.
Yeah. You got to help her tonight.
I do. Of course, this is Zeus. This is one of my little old men that we talked about. And if you watched the show on Wednesday, you know that I had to put his brother down. But here he is. He's been making funny noises all night, like howling and stuff that he's never done.
Grieving. That's sad.
Yeah. And so we thought we'd bring him on the show and say hi to everybody.
Yeah. That's sad. He's grieving for his brother.
Yeah, and that, and my daughter's made him a little bit spoiled now. She's been holding him and cuddling him a lot more. And I think he's just like trying to tell her all the time, hey, come get me.
Right. Right. That's awesome.
Pick me up. Because he can't jump on anything. His legs are a little short.
Yeah, just a little bit. That's funny. I got a cat coming up to me, so yeah.
Yeah, he is grieving a little bit and stuff like that. But, I mean, it was for the best. And unfortunately, his brother's health wasn't always the best. So,
yeah. Gotcha.
But he's healthy as a miniature horse.
There you go. There you go.
He's good. He's good. He's just like looking around, trying to get on my desk, see what I got up here, see if I got some snacks.
Oh, yeah. That's the best part.
Right. Well, I'm going to let him down so we can get on with the show.
There you go. I just put him like I got my cat. My cat's sitting right here in front of me. So.
All right. Let me put him down.
Three animals.
Yeah, he's now following my daughter out.
Yeah, well, good.
He has to run and see me, lay down for a little bit, and then he's got to follow my daughter wherever she goes. Mm-hmm. So, the cat doesn't like him at all, but
Yeah, it happens. It absolutely
happens.
And anyway, I got a kitty cat right here. It won't leave me alone. So.
I think we should just have the animals around every show. Just, give that calming effect,
Yeah. Well, I've got the big dog. I had to put him in the crate because Ava's supposed to come home. If not, he'll just be all kinds of noise. So he's downstairs tonight. And then the little one, he just yipes if Ava's not here. So, and she's not
here.
Here.
My goodness.
Yeah.
See, I think we have spoiled animals.
We do. We want our attention all the time. Well, we have a conference coming up. It's September 19th and 20th, and we're just going to be real brief about it. Real quick here, we have Josh Hurd, Malvern. He's from Malvern Manor. Heather Mosier, Small Town Monsters. Will Lunsford, Lady Ann Celine, Ron Murphy, Dr. Dean Bertram, Greg Ogles, Frankie Camballata, Dan Klein, Sir Brian Bowden, Miguel Ramirez. And then our special guest is Ken Gerhard, Dana Stricker, Brent Thomas, Ryan Edwards, Mike Familiant, and Chris Garitano, Linda Eastburn, and David Glidden. And we also added Martin Groves to the
Martin Groves.
Yeah.
Yes, so, Martin Groves has been added. So we said we were going to stop, but I guess we didn't.
We didn't. And what's really funny is our guest tonight, we actually have a guest tonight on a Friday night. We have our friend Steve Kulls. He's a Squatch detective. Yeah. And we just invited him to our conference. So I'm going to go ahead and bring him up. So we just going to stop. Hey, you're on mute, Steve.
Well, look at that. I'm on mute. What a lineup you guys have. That is, you guys don't do anything small, do you?
No,
evidently not.
That is phenomenal.
Yep.
And, talk about having Ken Gerhard too. Ken and I have been on the speaking circuit for a while. He's a great speaker. So
yep, he is. He absolutely is. And his girlfriend is Lady Ann Celine. And she is a really good friend of Brandy and I. And so, he's actually bringing her. So he was just a bonus to come.
He's a bonus.
It's actually her that we asked to speak. We didn't even ask Ken to speak.
We didn't even ask him.
We didn't. Well, he gets all the attention. Our friend is Anne,
Yeah. And she's a really special lady in her own right. So we wanted to bring her. And I'm like, well, crap, we're going to get Ken too. What a bonus. Gotta love that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's funny. You remember Randy from the conference? He says, "Oh no, it's that guy."
Yeah, it's that guy.
He's a tinfoil.
Yeah, it's me. So I do have a tinfoil hat here somewhere.
There you go.
You can borrow mine.
Yeah, well, hang on.
Oh, wait a minute. You may have it.
He does.
All right, we're ready.
You guys need to have him on Truth or Tinfoil then.
We do. You would love that show because all we do is take evidence at face value and we just throw it out there and we talk about it the way it is.
That's it.
Sometimes we know what it's about. Sometimes we don't. And we sit there and think, maybe this is evidence and maybe not.
Yes, maybe not.
Thank you, BMR. Appreciate you.
Maybe it's real. Maybe it's complete and utter baloney.
Right. That's why it's called Truth or Tinfoil.
Love it.
Yep. What have you been up to, man? It's been a little while since you've been on here, and it's been a long time since we've seen you. So
I know. Jeez, how time flies, doesn't it?
Right.
It does.
It just seems like it was like just like maybe 9 months ago we were all in Texas, and it was a few years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
How did that happen?
I don't know.
No idea. So I think it's about time that you make a trip to Missouri in September, and
well, I'm thinking we may be able to make that happen.
that'd be awesome. That would be absolutely awesome.
Give me a day to work the logistics, make sure it's not conflicting with anything, and I'll get back to you guys.
It's September 19th and 20th.
Okay. Yeah, because last year that's usually around the weekend Pennsylvania the Bigfoot camping adventure was.
Right.
But they moved it up this year to the end of August. So
wow, very cool.
Maybe
Very
looking at a very big, because in August I have Hocking Hills and I got the Pennsylvania Bigfoot, and the end of September is the Whitehall one. It's the last weekend usually in September. So this works out perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I mean, and think about this. You won't have to do nothing. But sit around, talk to other people.
Yeah, just sit there and, try to look pretty.
Bring some books. Bring some books and sell some books.
Yeah, bring some books, sell some books, make it worth the trip,
We can do that. We'll get a craps table over in the corner, and
There you go.
It's possible. Anything's possible.
That's okay. We won't talk about last year at the Pennsylvania Bigfoot one. We had a little speakeasy going on over at one of the tents.
Oh no,
that's funny. Too funny.
I was like, I see somebody with a cup, and I look, and I'm like, and they turn around, and they're like, I'm like,
I love it when they just smell their cup and smile at you.
I saw the cup, and I'm like, he just turned around, and he turns around and sees me going.
That's funny.
So, it was.
Yeah, too good. Well, real quick, I want to thank Bigfoot Michigan Rob for your mind to see, and I like Ike. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to getting on his show too. It's going to be fun.
Yes, absolutely. Let me put this cat down because she is just like all kinds of lovey-dovey tonight. Well, my daughter, she's addicted, or not addicted. She is at the hip of my daughter, and my daughter is spending the night away tonight, and so now she's clinging to me more so than normal.
The cat's completely like, what the heck's going on?
Yeah, she's about driving me. I don't know if
It's
it's
like
like I'm not in the middle of a show or what, you know?
That's right. Cat's going, you're not my person, but you're going to be for right now.
Right now, that's it.
I got to yell at my office assistant over there. Get in your chair. Get in your chair. Good boy.
That works. So what have you been up to? Let's go back a long time ago, because I know you've got a lot of things you've been doing.
Well, yeah, we actually since we've seen each other, I penned a book last year called The Psychology of Bigfoot. And it was a very in-depth analysis of terms such as cognitive bias, or cognitive dissonance, and bias, and talk about anthropomorphism and stuff to explain sometimes bad Bigfoot sightings and why people kind of cling to some non-science stuff, or how some people can be given evidence and turn around and still deny that evidence exists. So, I mean, we explore a lot of those concepts. I also explore a lot of the concepts that, like, why is photography and Bigfoot so difficult?
Right.
And truthfully, we all talk about the technology today, how well we should have more pictures with all the, camera phones and stuff like that. But that's simply not true. The older, more analog type of cameras were a lot easier to operate under emergency conditions than phones are. If you think about it, you see a Bigfoot, you got to get your phone out, you got to swipe, you got to, some people keep it locked, so you got to unlock the phone, you got to get to the app, then you got to put it up there, and then you got to hit the button.
Right.
Whereas the old analog, you just pick it up and shoot.
Yeah.
So that's a big reason. And a lot of the analog stuff was manual focus, right? Everything is autofocus. Why are pictures of Bigfoot so blurry? Well, everything is autofocus. So the minute you pull that camera up, if there's a tree branch between you and that Bigfoot, it's going to focus on that tree branch.
Makes sense.
So that a lot of big reason. And then we also talk about the delay in the mind. When you see a Bigfoot, your mind's trying to figure out what it's looking at. If it's not in your wheelhouse, you're like, what am I looking at? Is it a bear? It's not a bear. It's, and by that time, it's, Bigfoot's not going to hang out and say, your picture.
Right. It's time.
Picture.
Yeah.
So that was my book. I came out last year, but this year I started working on, I started working on one particular paper, and that spawned an idea. I was writing a scientific paper basically on, the psychological effects of Bigfoot witnesses. And what it did was it spurred me to do a bunch of scientific papers on other topics within the realm of Bigfoot. And before you know it, I was like, I have a 412-page book, which is coming out March, or 402-page book, which is coming out on March 1st. And it contains 49 separate scientific papers with a 270 plus bibliography, over 270 sources like Dr. Jane Goodall, Dr. George Schaller, Diane Fossey, and stuff like that. And it answers probably about 95% of the questions anybody will have about a Bigfoot, using science terms, having science references, as well as the reasons why, some of the things we attribute to Bigfoot are likely not possible, but there are some things we attribute that are very well possible. It also builds basically a scientific profile of what a Bigfoot is.
Right.
We know a lot about Bigfoot, and people don't understand that through comparative analysis with other primates, we know a lot about Bigfoot. We just don't know the fine detail minutia.
Sure.
We have, when it comes to a Bigfoot, at least we have several options when it comes to certain things we don't know. And that's the gist of the the book. It's a great reference book. Somebody says, "Hey, why is this?" It's also a good foundation to combat skeptics.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the reason why. We do case studies on the Patterson Gimlin film in the book. We do an actual scientific case study. We do one on Ray Wallace.
Mm-hmm.
We do, when we let me go back to Patterson Gimlin. We look at Patterson Gimlin. We look at it from all aspects. We talk about Bob Hieronymus and Philip Morris. We talk about Ray Wallace with the fake stompers and all of that. And why or why not this helps or hurts the Patterson Gimlin film. And and the book tries to make all the right and logical points without jumping to science fiction. And that was huge to me.
Wow, absolutely. I'm definitely going to have to get that book. Where are we going to be able to get it on Amazon, or where is it going to be for sale?
Yeah, it's going to release on Amazon on March 1st.
March 1st.
March 1st. And I will have a link to it 5 minutes after it comes out, which will be midnight, March 1st. I'll have the link up on my website right up.
For sure, send it to us too, so we can also share it with our viewers and anybody that might be interested.
And for the first time, I have a soft cover and a hard cover available, because
that's awesome.
To me, it's the kind of book that somebody's going to want to keep to look at. Like if you want to know the bare facts, like there's one chapter that I just flipped to, and it's a scientific paper based on the plausibility of Bigfoot aggression, a comparative and case-based analysis.
Yeah.
And we look at other primates and their aggression and their aggressive behaviors. And we do several case studies within that paper itself.
Oh, wow. Wow. You've been doing this for a long time though, haven't you? I mean, you've been.
Yep. I have been at this since 1998. So 27 years now.
Yeah. Long time. What got you into this?
A bet. No, not a bet. No. Well, there was, I always had a childhood fascination, but that left me when I was a teenager. But what happened was somebody had showed me this book written. It was written in the I think it was written in 92, and it's called Monsters of the Northwoods. And it was a book all about Bigfoot sightings in my neck of the woods. Whitehall, Kinderhook, either way, these places like Kinderhook at the time where I lived was an hour south of me. Whitehall was an hour and 25 minutes north of me. Now Whitehall's a half hour up the road because I've moved up to the same county.
Wow.
But yeah, and being an investigator, I was like, I want to know if this is real or just a bunch of baloney. And I was quite skeptical at first. I thought that a lot of the stories and a lot of the people involved were going to fall apart, or quite the contrary. People were very much truthful. And being a forensic interviewer,
I was just going to say your background is law.
Yeah.
Law enforcement. Yeah.
I started interviewing them. At least people have seen something, or at least they believe they've seen something. So to me, it was like, and there was so much more things that were beyond coincidence. Why is this one person reporting the same thing as the other person reporting? And then as I found years down the road, and again, another basis for the book, I find these incredible coincidences, and they all align with a lot of known primate behavior. And, it's like, well, that doesn't surprise me from what I know about primates. So then in about 2009, I started doing a lot of reading on behavior of primates. I started watching every video. I started reading every book I could get my hands on about chimpanzees and orangutans and gorillas and all that stuff, and go, yeah, there is something in line with that. And even when you look at our own modern history as Homo sapiens, there are some things in line with it too. So
yeah, wow, I find that really interesting. Like, have you had Bigfoot encounter yourself?
Two of them.
Can you talk about them?
Yeah, absolutely. So my first one was and of course, I'm not talking about anything that I just saw on a piece of equipment. Because prior to that, I've had a couple of night vision sightings, but I'm talking about sightings with my own naked eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was October of 2011, and I had my team out there, and we were all hearing stuff all throughout the night. I got the whole team back. We had about a dozen people in the field, and we're all debriefing and we're all eating, and we're going to go out for our next round in a little bit. And I said, my headlamp's kind of dim. I'm going to get some fresh batteries. So I go out to my car, where our base camp was. It's about maybe a 50-foot walk through some very light forested area to the dirt road. So I walked out there, opened up the car, got my batteries, closed the door, light up a cigarette. Said, I'm going to look down. Downhill was to the north. And I looked downhill, which up until that time was where a lot of activity was going on, was to the north of us. Nothing. And I spin around uphill to the south, and standing next to the utility pole on the dirt road is this 8-foot tall, dark, silhouetted creature, conical shaped head, very slender, lanky. And its eyes were, like reddish orange, and they were looking, they're looking at me. And the first thing it kind of did was look behind it, look back at me, and the eyes are blinking. I could see them blinking as they're reflecting in my eyes. I just froze. And
how far away was it from you?
About 100 to 125, 150 feet, somewhere in there.
Wow. Not that far.
No. No more than 50 yards. I would probably say it was probably more likely 35 yards or so. And we ended up measuring it, by me standing where I was standing. And it was probably about 8 foot tall, give or take, several, a few inches.
Yeah.
Just unreal in that whole spectrum of things. And I shook the flashlight, and it walked into the wood line. And what it was doing was watching our base camp, because it was October, leaves have dropped. It was sitting there watching our fire, heard us. We were cooking food, and it was just, we were their TV. So
you said it was dark in color. What color was it? Could you tell the actual color?
I could not tell from the distance and the light, because it kind of silhouetted it. Sure. And at the time, this is 2011. I think my flashlight was maybe 300 lumen, so it wasn't anything spectacular. Yeah. It's not like my 1800 lumen I have now.
Right.
So that was my first sighting. And the funny thing is as it walked off into the woods, the base camp radioed me and said, "Hey, we have something really big, moving around to the southwest of the camp." And I went, "Yeah, no kidding. Get Team A out here quick. I just saw one."
Wow.
And because they heard it, they all heard it walking into the woods. And they actually found a scuff, a partial track where it stepped in. And when they filmed it, you could actually see the dirt falling in on it. And I didn't even see that for a few years. Yeah. After it happened, because they said, "Oh, here's the video of your interview." And I watched the interview, but I didn't watch the evidence review. Yeah. And then one day I'm sitting there watching the whole thing, putting together a video. I'm like going, "Oh my God, they actually caught that."
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And then a year later, sighting almost the same area. Almost a year to the day later. I was with several researchers from Ohio, a couple from Ohio, and a gentleman from Georgia. Or I'm sorry, he's from now he's North Kakalaki. So we're all, we were filming America's Book of Secrets at the time. And, we had just driven in that night. It had been raining, and we were collecting birch all day long. And the rain started to break for the evening, thank goodness. So we're in the process of, trying to keep dry, and we're all up. And we said, "Listen, we drove all day today," because we were actually at Chautauqua Lake, where we met Bob Gimlin and spent the weekend with Bob Gimlin. And now we're all the way across the other side of New York State, which is, if you ever gone east to west in New York State, it's
Mhm.
about a 5.5 hour drive. So it's not. And then
Yeah.
we had to go another hour and a half. So
Yeah.
So they're like, listen, we don't want to do any real filming tonight. If you want to do some quick interviews or whatever, that's fine. And they did, and they left probably about 8:00. So we were in camp till quarterling around and just doing our thing. And about 11:00, Jeff goes, I got to go out to my Jeep. I'm going to grab my pillow and my blanket
Mhm.
because he didn't keep it in his new tent because he didn't know if it leaked or not because of the rain. It was dry. So okay, I'm going to get my pillow and blanket off. He goes into his tent. Good night. Wayne, one of the guys from Ohio, his wife had already gone to bed. So Wayne and I kind of kick off. And we were maybe about an hour and a half later. I wake up. Brandy's back.
Yeah, briefly. I did real quick. BMR, I think, is also going to hop on too in case Brandy loses it again.
Sure. So I
You know,
end up,
and I find it funny. Go ahead. I'm lagging. I've got to go off again. So tell him thank you, and I'm gonna go off again and come back on.
Okay.
So I end up waking up, and I'm like, I got to use a tree. So as I step out of the tent, here is a 5.5 foot tall, reddish brown, long haired, just taking off. And when I heard my zipper open up on the tent, not on other things, it was when I opened the zipper on the tent, it was taken. I was in the process of taking off. And my first reaction to that was, no, I couldn't have just saw that. I couldn't have just saw that.
Right.
The next morning, Jeff, the guy from North Carolina, he gets up, goes to put his pillow and blanket back in his Jeep, and something had left a birch log behind his Jeep.
Wow.
So that tells me it was watching us the whole day.
Absolutely.
We were collecting birch.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So that one to me sounds like a juvenile, 5 feet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 5.5 feet. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I actually saw that one more clear because although it was cloudy, there was a full moon. So everything kind of had like this night light type of glow to it.
Right. Right.
And of course the leaves are dropped. So I got a real good look at it, as far as the profile of it. And, there was no breasts, you couldn't see any, all I could make out really was that head and that upper torso just hoovering.
Yeah.
And that was it. And it moved fast. It moved relatively quietly.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't say nothing because it was so quick. I was like,
caught off guard. Yeah. I hear you. There's a quick question here. And I know you did say it. And I remember the TV show. Says, Krista, did he say Book of Secrets earlier?
Yeah, it was America's Book of Secrets.
Yes. Yes. That was actually a TV show, Little Patty.
Yep.
What episode were you in?
I wanted to think it was called The Secrets of Bigfoot.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah.
They actually replay that on some channels. Like that's where I've watched it. They'll play it. It's a pretty good show, actually.
Yeah, it's not a bad show at all. In fact, it was kind of funny because the sound guy that was on that show actually had just got done a year previously. He worked for 5 years on Dog the Bounty Hunter.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he had come over and he looks familiar, and because every once in a while the camera would catch him as a sound guy.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, I did that Dog the Bounty Hunter for 5 years. And we got into a big conversation about his experiences with them. So that was really cool.
That would have been cool.
So, and of course they thought it was cool having me around in my crew because we were Bigfoot guys, but it was kind of funny. At one point, it was dark in the camp and there's a rock in the camp that's embedded, and I know that rock all too well.
Yeah.
And that particular day I hit that rock and I went, it just kicked both my feet up in the air and I went straight down.
Yeah.
And before you know it, I have the entire crew looking over me. And they're like, did we just lose the guy we came out here to see? I'm like, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Right. I hear you. Yeah. Very cool. Well, looks like we don't have Brandy back, but we have BMR.
Called once again into emergency duty.
Yeah.
I just did an hour and a half prior to your show.
I know you were live. I didn't have a chance to hop on there.
That's okay. Yeah, I noticed you weren't there.
Yeah. Thanks.
I'm kidding. Hey, we only are on 7 days a week, it seems. So.
Yeah, that's true. There is somebody.
Hey, Steve, good to see you, man.
Hey, good seeing you, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, I don't know if Krista talked to you backstage.
I haven't had a chance to yet.
Okay, well, we'll talk a little bit. Yeah,
Yep.
but hey, good to see you, Steve.
Oh, same here.
Yes. We were just talking about Steve's encounters. He's had 2.
Well, very nice. I'm
Yeah.
always chilling for a good story.
Yeah.
Or 2 encounters story. When I say story, people say, Rob, is that made up when you say story? No, it's an encounter story. I forget the semantics.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, a story is a story. It could be a true story. It could be.
Yeah, you got
That's
that. Absolutely. That's my opinion.
That's right. How often do you get out to the woods, Steve?
Well, wintertime, when I was a young and strapping young lad and a fresh researcher, all the time, winter, summer, spring, and fall. Now it's the spring and fall. Too cold during the wintertime, too hot during the summertime, and too buggy during the summertime.
Right.
But emergencies do take precedence. So if somebody said, "Hey, I see something going on today," regardless of what time of the year, I'm out there. Somebody says, "Well, a year ago I saw a Bigfoot in this area," we'll check that out in the springtime.
Mm-hmm.
So we get out as much as possible, and we follow the leads, and we get out to our research areas a few times a year. And I don't want to oversaturate it too.
Sure.
I have this particular research area that I have been visiting since 2000, and
Wow.
it came in from an actual sighting report by a man and his wife, and he had actually worked for the government. Actually, to this day, he has a piece of his artwork, his graphic artistry, in the Smithsonian Institution, and he does a lot of graphic arts and diagrams and stuff. And he had told me about this encounter where him and his wife went off trail, and something got a little aggressive with them, started screaming at them, and gave them an escort out. They could see it out of the corner of their eye. So I started hitting that one particular area up, and that's where I've had my 2 encounters from. That's where I found the Floridian cast. That's where other people have had encounters too over the years as well. So it's been a really great area, and they've come to know me a little bit, I think. A couple of years ago, I was out there with Alex Petikoff from Small Town Monsters and a few others. And we were out there and just exploring, and we were all around the base camp. And I was like, I said, let me just try this. And I'm like, hey, fellas, come on. You know who I am. I'm here every year. You hear my voice. I always get out of the car. I whoop at it a couple of times. I yell out, get them acclimated to my voice, who I am, what I am. Work with Goodall and the chimpanzees. I'm trying with this.
Right. And
this time, I did all that. I whistled a couple of times, like, come on, fellas, don't be afraid. You know who I am, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Alex and this filmmaker by the name of Eric Swanson, Eric had his audio going, and they were out on the roadside. I was in the base camp with a few others. And after I had did that, wouldn't you know, we got a whoop. And it was one of the clearest recorded whoops you would ever hear.
Wow.
Because Eric was recording on this very high-end digital recorder for his filmmaking. And he automatically clipped it and sent it to us the next day. He was like, oh, great job. That was awesome. So they responded to me, but that was it. It was just a one-off whoop, and that was it. And completely in a direction where it was only 2 groups of us, and we were both within like looking distance at one another from where we were. And there it was,
Great.
So they responded to my voice, which was kind of cool.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And I think, you know, between a period of 2011 through about 2013, they were very responsive to when I got there.
Mhm.
You know, because I would get there, I would do my couple of whoops,
Yeah.
yell at them a little bit, or yell out to them a little bit, and before you know it, activity starts happening.
Yeah.
Noises, rock throws, you know, little fun and games, and you know, sightings. So it's just unreal, but you can do it if you know. And it took years. I mean, mind you, I was going up there from 2000, the year 2000, and it wasn't until about 2010 we started getting noises. 2011 the visuals. So it took a long time to get that kind of relationship going.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, welcome, Tex.
There's Tex.
So see, it takes two guys to make up for one Brandy.
You know, it does. Now I'm going to leave now. Well, I'm going to leave now. Hi, Tex.
You're welcome to stay. You do not have to leave.
I'm kidding.
I just
I don't know. I don't know. I got a text from Krista.
You're welcome. Come on.
BMR showed up. I don't know if I can handle this or not.
Nah, that's not the way it rolls.
I love you, brother. I do.
Anyway, yeah.
It's a love affair. No, my Lord. Now we can leave. Thanks, Randy. Now we can leave.
No, 6 times the charm.
I'm not leaving.
Times the charm.
I'm actually not leaving because I'm getting into Steve's accounts here, so I'm gonna hang out.
Might as well.
Okay. You're good. You're good.
More the merrier.
That's
so you
right.
got all of us tonight, Steve.
Feel the love.
Excellent.
Feel the love.
Yeah, I mean, up until in 2006, I got the Floridian cast, which was in the same park, and that one was a little bit of a grouch. He was a grouchy one, and the reason why I think the younger ones were much more responsive to, you know, our presence, because we had got this feeling that they were younger actually in 2010, because all of a sudden we went from having very little sporadic activity to now every time we're up there, we're getting 3 distinct directions of movement. And in fact, I'll never forget the day I walked down the roadway with a partner, and we were being paralleled on both sides of the road. We could hear stuff moving on the right side and left side. We come back and I grab my son and his buddy, and they were both in school for fish and wildlife management. So they're both, you know, up on their science. My son now is a New York State forest ranger. And I'm like, hey guys, take a walk down the road for a second, come back up. They came back up and they're like, the freakiest thing happened. Something was following us on both sides of the road. Well, what the hell does that? I have no idea. Right? So kind of proved our point, but going back to the Floridian cast, the grouchy one, that was a cast, that impression I got was not there when we walked in. We had heard it walk around us, and we got hit with the smell.
Oh, wow.
And I'll never forget that. We hear this something moving around in response to our being there. And then all of a sudden, bang, it just hit us. Like, what the hell is that? It smelled like death, skunk, musk, wet dog, garbage, all rolled up into one. Now, I was a paramedic in my early 20s, and I've been in houses that people have been dead for a couple of weeks. Right? And, you know, we need to check. Smelled worse than that. And just as quick as it was there, gone. And then we, all right, let's go get the night equipment. And then wait a minute, what the hell is this? So we find the trackway, which, we find the print that had crossed perpendicular to the trail, which is where we had heard it moving. And the next day we go back in the daytime, we find the trackway.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I gotta know, what's your son's, what's their take on this? I mean, I know they can't officially come out with it. They can't, right?
Well, now, and
Are they kind of loosening up on that?
my son really hasn't said much about it other than the fact that they have no real official position. They don't really address it. He actually called me up. He goes, "Hey, Dad, has there ever been a sighting at such and such state park? Like, not that I know of." He goes, "Well, there is now." So yeah, I mean, there is really no official position, and my son's always like, "Hey, let me know when you go out." And he goes, "If I can, I'll go out with you," and that's awesome because I'll have a New York State Forest Ranger with me. You know?
Wow.
Well, that's
Now,
cool.
now
At least they're not-
in New York State, almost similar in New York State, a New York State Forest Ranger is actually a specialized state police officer.
Right.
So he has police powers. He's he can pull people over for traffic infractions. He can do all of the above, but their specialty is just the forest. And then they are their outbreak is they deal with fire, rescue, and conservation. The NCON police deal with poaching and investigation and stuff like that. So,
Wow.
Well, at least they're saying, "Oh, you can't talk about this," or
No.
if you talk about this, you lose your job, type thing. You know?
Well, I don't know if they smile upon it or kind of frown, but
Well, yeah,
truthfully, I talked to it actually when we were filming America's Book of Secrets. Now I had been coming up to that one area at that point in time since 2000, and that was in 2000. America's Book of Secrets was in 2012. So I've been come up there for 12 years, never saw a state forest ranger. Well, Nat Geo the production company had called and asked, do they need any permits? I said, "I told you didn't need any permits." They were told no. Well, of course, the day they came up to shoot during the day, here's a forest ranger in his dress greens. And I'm like, I've never seen a forest. So I looked at him. I said, "Yeah, I know what you're going to say. This is probably all, a bunch of hooey." And he turned around. He goes, "Oh, no." He goes, "There's land in these Adirondacks nobody's walked for a couple hundred years. Who knows what's out here?"
Wow.
And just like that, like completely open about the subject, which was very impressive.
yeah.
Yeah, it is. And very hard to come by.
Yeah.
Well,
And then if I may, I'm going to use an explicative because I'm going to quote him. And as he's talking to me, an NCON car parks with an NCON biologist coming up, right? And he goes, "But that guy doesn't believe it. He's an a-hole." I almost fell over laughing. And this was a veteran ranger. I mean, he was, he had been, in fact, I found out that he'd been a ranger for something like 26 years when I had talked to him. So my son eventually met him.
Crazy.
Wow. So he's probably seen his fair share of strange stuff.
Yeah. Or heard strange stuff.
Right.
Well, but that just tells me that maybe we're getting a step closer to them coming off of this.
Well,
We're not blatantly denying it or anything
Right.
like that. So
I do think, and although people want to criticize the show, I think Finding Bigfoot, for what it was worth, it did take the word Bigfoot and made it not a 4-letter word.
right.
Right. People became a little more open about its existence. So that was the one plus thing. The negative thing was everybody thought, Bigfoot research is here. Let me get the stick, knock on a tree, and that's Bigfoot research.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But there's always pluses and negatives to everything.
Yeah. I think Brandy froze up again because I guarantee you she's not sleeping right now. And it's looking like she's sleeping on my side.
Yeah.
She's psychically projecting.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. I just need a picture of that one, send that to her.
She's in Zen mode.
She's in Zen mode. That's what it looks like too.
Either that or I bored her to death.
No?
She just died right there.
No, definitely not boring. Definitely not boring.
Yeah. That's too
So-
funny.
Steve, when you start talking about, because I know a lot of people, you stepped on a lot of toes. back in the day.
How's that?
Oh, come on.
I step on toes.
Well, what I mean is you were so you weren't afraid to call somebody out for BS.
Right.
That's what I mean.
I don't call that stepping on toes. I think it's just calling it straight.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
But you hurt some feelings. Let's put it that way.
Whose feelings did I hurt?
You didn't ever hurt mine.
Well, exactly. The only feelings I hurt
were the ones that needed to be hurt.
Right.
I agree.
Right.
But
and there was nothing.
I think
there's nothing personal. Yeah, sure.
If you shut up, I'm trying to give you a compliment. This ain't nothing. You ought to go drinking with the guy, okay?
I have. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good time.
It is a good time.
We had a freaking blast. But and I got to tell you, you for a while you took a bad rep. I mean, because everybody was like, "Oh, he's he's a-hole and all that kind of stuff," and it's not that at all. It's that you weren't afraid to go, "No, I'm sorry, no, this is not what it appears to be."
Right.
And honestly, I took a lot away from that from you, because it's like you can because I broke some hearts on some footage.
Sure.
Okay. And what I liked about you is you do it, but there's also that, I don't agree with what you're seeing. I don't see what you're seeing, but I wasn't there. Mm-hmm.
Right.
You take that approach,
right.
And you don't dismiss anybody's encounter.
Right.
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 So I think you set a good example for a lot of people if they pay attention, is what I'm trying to say.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, there's a guy from Wisconsin. His name is Jay Bachochin, who got this picture, and they saw it and they took a picture, and there's a lot of ambiguity to it. Is it pareidolia? I don't know, but I can't take away what they had observed with their own eyes.
Right.
Right. I think there's a huge difference when somebody takes a blob squatch picture when they see something versus somebody just arbitrarily taking pictures and go, "Oh, there's a Bigfoot." Like the whole, there's like 3 or 4 Bigfoot in the Patterson Gimlin film nonsense. Right? Mm-hmm. What about the 2 guys that were there that only saw the one? Right.
Yeah.
And we forget about that. And I think it's huge to, to call somebody out that is, blatantly trying to make fools of us or take advantage of us or any of that. I have no problem somebody making misidentifications, having pareidolia, no problems at all. Sure. There's nothing really personal to it at all. But a couple have crossed that line, like the guy from the West Coast. When they cross that line, that's when, the gloves come off.
Yeah.
And that's, that's the type of investigator I am. I am coming from this as an investigator. I'm not coming at this to be somebody's friend necessarily. Right. Hey, if you're telling me the truth and I believe you, and I'll be your best friend in the world. If you're lying to me, it depends on how far you want to take it. If you're just like, hey, all right, I think they saw something, or I think they may have a psychological issue, I'm just going to let it go. But if somebody's trying to, blast it all over the media and blast it all over the internet saying, hey, this is my Bigfoot, and wait a minute, whoa. And then there's the ambiguity ones, the ones like the Mississippi skunk ape video, which, people get mad at me. They get so invested in it. And the other book I came out with last year, it delves a lot with cognitive dissonance. And listen, this film came from a television show called Beast of the Bayou. Sorry, there's nothing where they actually had an actor portray the guy who allegedly filmed it. And if you think they're just having an actor portray him to hide his identity why did they hide the identity of the actor on the, because they were trying to make it look like it was the real guy.
Mhm.
Right? Like this guy existed, and it was just created for this TV show. But people, oh, this is the best, and it psychologically it made no sense. And I brought that up first, but then
Mhm.
we had found the whole. But people get so angry and so mad at you. Oh, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Well, why are you so? You can tell there's cognitive dissonance right in there because they get so angry and make it so personal.
Mhm.
Like there's a certain gentleman who his followers will attack me, but they never argue with what I'm saying. They only attack.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You're a dumb. Okay, goodbye. There's no sense in having a conversation with that type of person. I'm an investigator first and foremost. I just call it like I see it. And I don't call somebody a hoaxer unless I have proof in hand.
Well, and that's why that's one of the biggest reasons that I was so excited to show you the evidence that we had.
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew if anybody was going to shoot straight with me, it was going to be you.
And I did.
And that was a lot of validation, brother, when you said, oh, wow, because, it's to have somebody that is, I don't want to say a skeptic, but as
a person who comes into it without confirmation bias.
Yes.
I just toe the line. Yeah.
You won't, if you're not going to tell me something's there just to make me feel good.
Right.
And this field needs a lot more of that. It really does.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
it ain't. And I've been there. I've been on both sides of it. I've been on, submitted, show people evidence where it's, oh yeah, this is cool. Like, what I showed you. And then I've showed people, evidence and they're like, I don't see nothing. And you're like, okay, well, you got to throw it out.
Right.
It's like Brandy and Krista, with the paranormal evidence, and they're approaching the cryptid field just like it. When in doubt, throw it out because,
It's our motto.
You have to be that way.
Well, I have a running rule, and that's when in doubt, peer review it. Peer review it.
Mhm.
If like the Vermont trail cam photo,
Yep.
that got sent to an optic scientist.
Wow.
And he said, no, this is something on the ground, yada yada yada. If he had said no, this could be a bird, then I'd have to go with what he said.
Sure.
Same thing with the Floridian cast, same thing. That's why you don't see much information put out there right off the shoot for me.
Right.
I get something and it takes 3 to 4 months to get that whole process through before something actually makes it to my website and said, hey, we want to show you this.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So, it's just proper investigation technique.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's the thing too, to me, like with doing the paranormal, we go in as a skeptic. We don't go in, like we go to someone's house, we listen to what they're saying. However, we need to experience this ourselves. It's not that I don't doubt them, but there are so many reasonable explanations of why things can be happening. You get what I'm saying, Tex, too, So
Absolutely.
I think you have to be skeptic in any of this, look for something reasonable first, or I guess out of, more norm,
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's take one of my encounters, for example. The whole hearing the voice in the shower type thing. I was the only one here. I have no way to validate it. I know it happened, but I mean, I have no way to prove it. But it's an interesting, when it comes down to it, it's an interesting story.
Right.
That's all there is to it.
Yeah. Yep.
But
absolutely.
it's I don't know. I think a lot of people, this pareidolia, man, it gets a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, it does. And it's pareidolia, it's confirmation bias, it's cognitive dissonance. It's, it's really, You know, and the other thing too, it's something we call illusionary superiority.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what makes a cat vet think that they're a specialist in DNA?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then they wonder why, when they don't follow proper scientific protocol, why their study is being scoffed at science. And their answer to that is, again, cognitive dissonance. Instead of accepting what's being told to them, they turn around and argue the fact by saying, oh, it's a conspiracy, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you see that kind of disconnect. And that, to me, as an investigator, as somebody that is not a scientist, but is a man of science, because I'm an investigator, it's all science. I find that very disheartening.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like I would expect better. But
yeah. Well, I always tell people, you know, I wasn't there for their encounter, so I don't knock them, and I don't not believe them. I just wasn't there, you know. So, I mean, you know, doing the paranormal for so many years, I've seen some strange stuff that people that's not into this, they're like, oh no, there's no way, you know, you're a liar or whatever, you know, and it's not at all. It's, you know, so I feel like, who am I to knock somebody else's encounter?
exactly. You know what? It's kind of funny. I had a few years ago, there's this woman in New York that has her own little podcast or something, and she was really big into believing in alien Bigfoot connection, UFO connection. And I sat there and I listened to her and we were just having this conversation. And I said, well, you know, you're entitled to believe what you want. I never say, you know, I never say, oh, you're stupid. You know, never say anything like that.
Yeah.
And this is the reason why I believe this. And I go down a whole litany of list. And at the end of it, she turned around, she goes, you know what? She goes, you probably are the only one that actually sat there and listened to what I had to say. And you responded to what I had to say with something intelligent or without an attack.
Right.
And she goes, I'm amazed. Don't be. That's the way I am. You know, if we're going to have a conversation, let's have something that's constructive and that maybe we can both learn something from.
Absolutely. You know, because it, you know, and that's my thing doing these, you know, like I see a lot of like pictures and things out there. I'm like, you know, I personally know it's pareidolia, or, you know, there's not 100 orbs in one picture when someone's outside, you know, and I just scroll on past because, you know, a lot of these people, they'll argue with you. It's just not worth it to me.
Again, cognitive dissonance, illusionary superiority. Those are two big words and confirmation bias. And they'll see something, and because they believe something in particular, they will cling to that. You know, we all know everything in a paranormal case is not demonic, although people will swear up and down they have, you know, demonic entities and whatnot. Sometimes people have overactive imaginations. And I remember, you know, in my paranormal side, I remember performing a deliverance on a property. And I said, I'm not sure if this girl have an active imagination or not, but we did find some really weird stuff in the house. So let's do a precautionary deliverance. And this is what's going to happen. One of two things. I said, if the parents follow my prescription, because a lot of people don't know that demonologists, like doctors, when they're done with their work, they have a prescription for the aftercare, right? And that was keep her away from watching Sabrina the Teenage Witch and all that garbage, and Harry Potter and all the witchcraft stuff that she was involved in and watching. And I said, take her to church every Sunday, get her involved in the church, get her to Sunday school, get her to something more spiritual, because they were Catholic.
Sure.
And we did a deliverance, and none of the follow-up care was done. And the girl went back to watching the witchcraft stuff and looking at that and reading books about witchcraft. Before you know it, everything's happening again.
Yep.
Well, of course, it's just her imagination. So, you know, and it comes to the point, well, even if it's not her imagination, if the parents are going to follow the prescription.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not going to help anything anyway.
Well, it's no different. It's no different than enabling somebody that has an addiction.
It's true.
Right. I'll tell you a real great story. It was my last, as a demonologist, it was my last case as a demonologist. And that was going on 6 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And I performed an exorcism with the permission of the mother on a 16-year-old girl. I had 2 police officers with me to help me with the exorcism. I had a registered nurse with me. I had a couple other investigators that brought me into the case. And this girl was lunging at me, cursing at me.
Mm-hmm.
And the cops were having a hard time holding this 90-pound, 5'4", 16-year-old from getting to me.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, after about 3 hours, performing the right about 3 times, we believed it finally left her.
Wow.
We leave, we pack up, we leave, we talk with her, we get her going, she knows what she's got to do. We end up leaving, and we get a phone call 15 minutes later from the girl. My mother's not acting right. We go back. The mother is sitting in her car in the driveway. It was the only area that was not blessed afterwards.
Wow.
And the mother was in full possession.
Wow.
We had to bring her back into the house and perform an exorcism on her. And that took another 4 hours.
So it jumped.
Yep. And then eventually, months later, we did a follow-up, and the mother admitted she asked it to jump in her.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And there you go. There's the invite, because the demonic need to be invited.
Right. So, wow. I mean, you want to talk about something that blew my mind. So when people, and this is what people understand, when I talk about Sasquatch being a completely different element than the paranormal, I come from a very unique position that I've done both sides of it. And a lot of people don't know this, but in the early 90s, I was a UFO investigator for APRO, the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization out of Tucson, Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
So I have experience all of that. I have experience in ufology. I have experience in the paranormal. I have experience, obviously, where I like being is in the Bigfoot world, because I always felt that, and that's just my investigative, curious nature, being an investigator by trade. I was always interested in good mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
And I was overjoyed. I don't know if you guys had heard. I was overjoyed to hear that they finally solved the Jack the Ripper case with DNA.
Really?
Yes. And I was like, I remember them coming out with the announcement, and I looked at my wife and I grabbed her arm. I said, "It's going to be Kaminsky." And they said, "Well, we've taken the DNA from the victim that was, apparently there was DNA left on the third victim that was found in the alleyway."
Wow.
On the shawl. So they took DNA sample, and it came back to, I believe his name is Adam Kaminsky.
Interesting.
And he was a Polish immigrant who was a butcher.
Which makes sense.
Right. And before the murder stopped, because he got committed to an insane asylum.
Really?
Yep.
So was it? So I had
I'm sorry. What they did was they actually got DNA from his great granddaughter, who volunteered. She gave up her DNA, and they tested the DNA on the DNA on the shawl or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And it was a familiar match with her.
Interesting. That's really interesting. I watched a documentary where a guy here in the States swore his great grandfather was it or something. Then come over here and killing people too.
Oh yeah, that was the guy who was H.H. Holmes.
Okay, yeah, I might have him wrong then. Yeah.
No, y'all are talking about two different people. But there was a guy that said his grandfather was actually
like a Jack the Ripper or something. I don't know.
And then there's the whole thing about H.H. Holmes being Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, as it turns out, it's this guy Kaminsky, which was actually, he was originally a named suspect in Jack the Ripper way back when.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that they had the DNA come back on that. I hadn't heard about that.
It just came out rather recently, within the last month,
Mhm.
and now they're officially submitting it to Scotland Yard to have
Oh.
them finally lay out the case. I remember watching a special documentary done a year or so ago on Jack the Ripper that was actually on network TV, and they had this guy on here and says, "Well, we have DNA, and we're working on the DNA on the shawl." And they or the sweat, whatever it is, I think it was a shawl, and they managed to get the DNA match.
Interesting. That's really cool, though.
Well, it's amazing what DNA can do.
Oh, yeah, there you go. It all goes back to science. Mhm.
Well, I mean, look at the, that's how they caught the cop over in California.
Yeah, the Golden State Killer. Yeah,
The Golden State, yeah.
and that the cop who got him, wow, his name escapes me right now, but I actually have a couple of books by him. Phenomenal guy. I mean, that guy, he's a criminalist, really smart. And he, like, you want to talk about a Quincy type of guy. He's the one who kind of took it there. He actually got in the car, surveilled, and did the whole nines and worked the lab. And that's true CSI right there. I mean, that doesn't usually happen, but unreal. And he had a good TV series for a while too. They had where he was looking at different cold cases from around the country. And but yeah, I mean, mystery is just part of the things. I mean, you want to talk about like the West Memphis 3. I was very involved or interested in what was going on there. There's a couple of unsolved murders near us. But there was a missing girl that went missing here in 1998 in the capital area of New York. And I am fairly certain I know who did that. And it was a serial killer by the name of Israel Keys, who ended up.
That's a twisted individual right there.
Yes. He ended up killing that barista from Nome, Alaska. And as the FBI got him, they started interviewing. It turns out he killed a couple.
Oh, I know. I just seen a thing on him on like 48 hours thing or something. He went all through the U.S., not just Alaska.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting story about Israel Keys. His signature was getting their debit card and scratching their PIN numbers on it. That's how they caught him with Samantha Koenig's debit card with the PIN scratched into it. He admitted to the FBI that he did the same thing with the couriers who got murdered in Burlington, Vermont. And before they could get anything else out of him, he committed suicide.
Right.
So during his interviews, and by the way, he lived in several places. He lived in Nome, Alaska. He has a property that he doesn't normally live in Constable, New York, which is at the very tip of the Canadian border. It's about 4 or 5 hours from here, where I live as we speak. And that's where he stayed when he murdered the couriers.
That couple. Yeah.
That couple. So the girl that went missing, her name is Susie Lyall, and she worked in Guilderland, New York, but it has an Albany mailing address. It's Crossgates Mall. It's like one of the largest malls in New York State. And she worked at an old store called Babbage's. It was a computer store. And she got on the bus to go to her dorm at SUNY Albany, which is down the road, maybe a mile or two. She gets off the bus and she's never seen again.
Wow.
Now, a month later, they find her name badge in the parking lot because it was wintertime when she went missing.
Sure.
She went missing in February, right? In the meantime, they find out that her debit card was used, and they track it down to a guy who was a cook at the university. He found the debit card in the parking lot, he says. Well, how did he know the PIN number? Police never released that. Right? How did he know the PIN number? So I'm thinking it might have been scratched on there. Then I'm finding out that the PIN number was scratched on it from an interview from her mother. So that matches Israel Keys. But here's the kicker. In when the FBI interviewed Israel Keys, that was in 2012. They asked him when he became who he was. He said, well, I became who I was about 14 years ago. That would have been 1998. Right? That's the year Susie Lyall went missing.
Sure.
Well, that was also the year, and this is their line of thought, I think, at the time was, well, that's when he enlisted into the Army.
Mm-hmm.
But he enlisted in the Army 3 months after Susie Lyall went missing. 3 months after. And you know where he enlisted from? Albany, New York.
Wow.
Where Susie Lyall went missing.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, you get, there comes a point like, and when does it stop being coincidence?
Right.
I don't believe in coincidence.
No, I mean, that stuff lines up. It's pretty much pointing you in a direction,
Absolutely. Yeah, that's crazy, man.
Yeah, he grew up.
I need to have you on our true crime show. We'd have.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, I'd love to. Because I like I said, one of my my things is criminal profiling. Studied, God, I'm so red on that. And, obviously with all my training, evidence and procedure and stuff like that, I just love that stuff. I mean, I was following that Delphi thing for years. And, that was always they were releasing so little information that it was really hard to put. That's why I was kind of chuckling at a lot of the online speculation by a couple of people like, what?
Right.
Did you what do you think about the Brian Cohey case? You heard about that one or seen that kid? Holy crap.
Yeah, he's twisted.
Whoo.
Yeah.
I don't know that one.
I'm fixing to start looking in. I'm fixing to, because I'm my next show up. I think I'm going to do the Austin yogurt murders.
I don't know them, but
Yeah, I don't either.
There was 4 girls killed in a can't believe it's yogurt shop in Austin. They never solved it. They put 3 guys in prison for it, but they're out now.
So they didn't do it. They let them out because they didn't do it, or they did their time and got out.
No, they if I remember right, they proved they were
they were innocent
because they can't prove they did it anymore or something. Or DNA released them because none of the DNA matched.
Could you imagine, like back in Jack the Ripper days, if DNA was there, Jack the Ripper murders would have been solved, I think, pretty quick.
I'm sure they would have. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Heck, fingerprints weren't even a thing back then.
Right.
Yeah. And to that day, I think there's only one actual crime scene photograph, and that was from the last one.
Mm-hmm.
That was the one that was in the house.
Yeah, and yeah. Which is the worst one.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you could see the escalation going on there.
Oh, absolutely.
That's very common.
Yeah.
But the Delphi murder thing was very interesting to watch unfold, and not surprising when they caught who they caught.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had always thought that it had to be somebody local to know that bridge and to know that. And what really got me on that proved that that eventually, like 3 months before the trial started, they realized they had an extra witness, and that was the guy that lived nearby that drove the white van. And when he said, well, yeah, I drove up there in my white van and I didn't see nothing. But according to the interview with what's his name, the guy who got convicted of it, he admitted that the reason why he moved him was because the white van. So he corroborated it before they had the witness.
Wow.
And that's just too much coincidence to be coincidence.
Absolutely.
And is there any doubt OJ didn't do it?
No.
And the amazing thing is that years later, we get that TV show where he basically admits to it on the air.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it's like you can't write this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And
you know what I find interesting, speaking of like crimes and things like that. So we brought this up. I watch. You heard of the Ghost Brothers? Okay, so one of them, I think it's Dalen Spratt is his name. So I follow him on YouTube, and he goes to and he went to the O.J. Simpson, Nicole Brown's grave, and he'll do like EVP sessions and things like that. And I find that he gets some legit stuff sometimes, And then there's another YouTube guys, it's Paranormal Nightmare, the Foreman brothers. They'll go and these cold cases, and they'll go to the locations, and they'll run EVPs and do ghost box sessions and stuff. And I mean, obviously they're not cops, so they're not solving these crimes. However, they get some intelligent responses, by doing the paranormal side of things. And I don't know, I just find that really interesting. I'd like to do something like that,
I've seen some really weird things. One of the places I used to go to, I'm very good friends with Dan Kleiss, the owner of the Hinsdale House.
Yeah.
So I've been out there a number of times.
Mm-hmm. That's a bad, creepy place,
say the least.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons, I don't tell this a lot, but one of the reasons why I got out of demonology was because of some of the physiological effects that was happening to me. I mean, I went to the one of the things I was getting was I was being attacked with boils.
Oh wow.
My first very case where there was a crypt where some satanic stuff had been going on in the cemetery. I told my team, get out of here. I don't like what's there. The next day, next morning, I woke up. I had 3 boils on the back of my head that were the size of $50.
Wow.
And that needed, it needed steroids and it needed antibiotics. It was very painful. And then a week later, we went to another spot in the same cemetery. And I came back, and that time I came back, my whole arm looked like a leopard. I was covered with hives.
Wow.
I went to Hinsdale, and I completely befuddled my doctor the first time I went to Hinsdale because I had a boil under each arm. He goes, I can understand in one armpit. I don't understand in both. I don't know what's going on here. Right? Nothing had changed. Same deodorant, same use.
Right.
All of a sudden, 2 days, later.
Yeah.
I go back a second time to Hinsdale, and I get the same boils come back. And then finally, after that time, it never happened again. The very first exorcism I ever did actually was deliverance. I turned around and I called our client, like I did a year follow-up. And I remember about 2 weeks after I did that, I had gotten Bell's palsy.
Really? Wow.
And on my left side, I thought I was having a mini stroke.
Right.
Because all of a sudden I'm like, what's going on in my face? I'm an ex-paramedic, so I'm like, oh, what the hell? Get myself to the ER. And the doctor actually showed me how to differentiate between a mini stroke and Bell's palsy. So they put me on antiviral. I caught it really quick. They said, well, luckily you caught it. You didn't let it sit there and go for a few days because that's when the damage happens. So we got you on antiviral quick. You should be free in 9 days. And 9 days later, I was fine. Never came back again. Even my doctor's like, I don't get it. Right. Well, I get it. I'm dealing with all this weird crap.
Right.
Right. So I do this year follow-up and I go, Tina, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing good. The only thing I had was like a couple of weeks after you did the deliverance, I got Bell's palsy.
Wow.
Which side of the face? Left side. Same side.
Interesting.
Weird.
Yeah. Well,
so glad to be out of it for now.
Well, the demonic, they can, and they'll wait. And so I have a good friend who, I did a couple true demonic cases with, and one of the cases, so he started swelling up. His arm started swelling up really big, and it was turning black and blue. And he went to the doctor, and he was bit by a rattlesnake, but he was never bit by a rattlesnake. He had to have antivenom. That's a true story. And he was never bit by a snake. There was no snake marks. There was no snake around, but it was after one of those cases. So,
I call it like demonic residue. When you deal with that, So that's why I don't deal with that very much anymore.
Yep. Yeah. I feel like once you do something with them, though, you're marked. You know, they're patient. They'll wait, you know. And so that's why I just, I stay prayed up, and I know where my faith is personally for me, and you have to.
Yep.
You definitely have to. And I think that's with any paranormal, because, you go to like a private case and you don't know what you're walking into, so you always got to have your guards up. You always got to be on top of your game.
And a lot of times the private cases are much worse than like a known area, like the Hinsdale house. You know what you're walking into there.
Right.
Private case, you don't know what you're walking.
You don't. No, you don't. Absolutely.
But I will say this, though, one of the neatest experiences I ever had, I got the most clear EVP of a little girl saying Dan at Rolling Hills in Genesee County, New York. Used to be the old Genesee County poorhouse. That's where the tall guy, the tall dark guy lives. I forget his name now, but that was the coolest thing. And I remember going, because I was live listening, and I heard this little girl go, Dan. Like, yeah. And I'm like, all right, did somebody just say Dan? And then I hear this like somebody's whispering into my mic, Dan.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was like, what the? Got that all captured too on
yeah, that's really cool.
You ought to hear the EVP that we got on the show one night.
Oh, I can imagine. It should have been on the show the night I got I had the rock thrown at me when I was out in the woods. You could hear that sucker.
Wow.
If anybody is and my best advice to anybody as the ex-demonologist or former demonologist, because you never know when you have to be called back in, but the best advice is do not do investigations out of abandoned or old churches that are no longer in sanctimony. And I'll explain that why, because the demonic love taking things over that were once holy.
Yep.
So you want to find a demon, go to an abandoned church. Absolutely. So stay away from them.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And that's weird, because most people think that that's going to be
a safe place.
Yeah, a safe place. You're in a church. It's like,
That's why I think
used to be a church. Used to.
Well, and that's like my feelings on cemeteries too. I believe the same thing. Because like our human spirit, it's gone from there. What is at a cemetery? You don't go to a cemetery because you're happy. It's all negative type feelings. And what does negative breed? It breeds negativity. So what's it bring in?
Sadness and grieving and loss and
Exactly. So that's an open door for the demonic. That's what I tell people all the time, like, just stay away from that stuff. And me personally, like you said, the Hinsdale house, I personally have no interest in going there. There are several places that are known D words that I don't go play with that stuff. Now, if it's to do a private case and help someone, I'm there in a heartbeat. But just to go for fun, to get a thrill, that's not my thing.
Oh, no. See, it's never about the thrill. Mm-hmm. You understand? Is look at it from the aspect of you're practicing your craft. Right. If I know there's something necessarily not too friendly in a place, I may go there to again practice my craft.
Yeah.
Like understand. There is knowledge you can draw from that. And sometimes you have to put yourself in harm's way to get knowledge. We do it every time we send an astronaut up into space. Right. We basically put them on, thousands of pounds of explosives and send them up into space. So there's always that risk. And that's the way I kind of look at it, and more of the, okay, we need to explore this.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. Well, we are at 24 after, and usually we go till 8:30, but I'm gonna have to cut it short just a couple minutes, only because I have a meeting at 8:30 I have to be into for our conference. And by the way, Tex, we invited Steve.
Oh no.
Love you, bro.
I love you too.
Oh God, we gotta get back to drinking again.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah,
Thanks.
for sure. For
I've
sure.
already told everybody somebody needs to bring bail money.
Nah.
It's in Missouri, so it shouldn't be that as bad as Texas bail.
There you go.
In New York, there's no bail. Anyway, yeah. Make sure, Christy, you send that information. Send me a poster over. I'll start advertising it too.
I appreciate it. Definitely.
Appreciate it,
And thank you for coming on. This has been fun.
Same
You are
here.
welcome
Thanks
to
very much.
information, and you're always welcome.
And don't forget, March 1st.
Yes, March 1st. Absolutely. All right, everybody. Tune in tomorrow night. Paranormal Paul, Donnie Cho, and BMR will be on tomorrow night too. So until then, we will see you all then. Good night, everyone.
This is the future. Evolution. This is the future.